kind of difficult customer interactions and explaining some of our decisions to customers, which has always been really important to us, but has become something that we have practiced a lot in the last year. I'm happy today to be joined by Elena Jones, who's the manager of the co-op, and Bryce Lucas, who's the manager at 57th Street Books. And we have all spent a lot of time talking about how we talk about our difficult choices of the last year. Before we start, just to recognize that there are, like, I think probably all of us have had difficult things to communicate to our customers in the last year, and some of that may look like your decisions around reopening or choosing not to reopen. We at the co-op and at 57th Street Books are currently still closed. We've never reopened. But then it may be other things too. There are other things to communicate about how many people you're having in your store. Maybe you live in a state where masks are not required, but you're requiring masks, those kinds of things. So to start, we'll talk a little bit just about our general customer service principles. One moment while I share my screen. So, one second, sorry. Okay, so a few things that we talk about anytime we're talking about customer interactions in the store, whether they're face-to-face, on the phone, or via email. We try to approach all interactions, no matter their tone, with gratitude on our part. We always try to assume that the customer is coming from a place of concern and that they are interested in helping us. And then finally, we bring all, as best we can, we bring all conversations back to bookselling. So that can look like a number of different things. Mostly for us, if someone has a question about how we're stocking the books in the store, or what we're choosing to display, or what voices we're highlighting, and what event programming we're managing, all of it comes back to what our mission is, which is to be booksellers. So anytime we can get that angle, we can guide the conversation back toward that principle, we do. Some things that we've learned in the last year that have helped us as we've had to communicate with customers in a whole new way. We have spent a lot of time developing our own language in advance. We think about the questions that come up, or when we notice that certain questions are coming up more often than others, we spend time in conversation with each other, so the management team, to decide how we think those questions should be addressed. And then we draft language for them, and we all spend time thinking through that language before we're put in a spot where we need to talk about it with people. That way it feels like it rolls a little more easily. If those conversations become at all difficult, it's more comforting to have practiced your language in advance. We also have spent a good amount of time this year deciding how much we feel comfortable with booksellers saying on our behalf as managers. And we've given pretty clear instructions to booksellers about that. That looks like a lot of things. We provide them with language. We work with them to develop that language, which is something that's been really helpful. Not only are they on the front line and they're interacting with more customers on a daily basis than we tend to, so their perspective is really valuable, but when they are able to have buy-in for the language, then they are more comfortable delivering it, and it all goes more smoothly. And then we, like I said before, we encourage them to rehearse that language too. We do have a bustling curbside pickup station, and so there are booksellers out there that man that station, and having them be comfortable answering questions like, why aren't you open, and why can't I place an order out here, that kind of thing is very helpful. We also finally we have begun using templates, which has, and for lots of different modes of communication. And I could understand if maybe template sounds like there's a chance that they might be cold, or that, we value our interactions with customers, and so we don't want it to seem like a one-size-fits-all kind of communication. But we have had really good luck with these templates. They allow us to develop our best institutional answer in our own institutional voice. And they also allow us to keep an eye on exactly what we're communicating so that we can make sure that everyone is getting the same message. So again, that's something that we share with booksellers that has been helpful for a number of reasons. So a couple of examples of our templates that we've used recently. So this is a longer email for us for these templates. This is something that we would share with a customer who emailed to ask why we're not open. So we, last summer, our director, Jeff Deutsch, created this beautiful letter to our membership about why we're deciding to not open, and the financial implications of reopening, as well as the public health concerns, all of these things. So rather than relist all of those things in an email, we drafted an email that points to that, that already created correspondence. Another template that we would use, maybe with small adaptations in some of our email customer correspondence. This is a really clear example of our institutional voice. This is what we like our customer emails to sound like, and the message we want to give to them, expressing gratitude and sorrow for, if they've felt frustrated about something. And so having this template allows us to have developed that already. And then a third one, this is how we might communicate with someone who has ordered something from us that it turns out we're not able to get. Sometimes people become frustrated about that. This is not a frustration email. This is I'm sorry, that book's not available. Here's what to know now. If you choose to use templates, whether they are to be emailed out or just to act as guides for how you behave in a person-to-person conversation, it's important to revisit them regularly. Your voice will change and your facts will change, and you'll understand that you've been telling everyone for several months that we don't take them for granted, and maybe that should be updated to sound a little different. So making sure they stay fresh and don't get stagnant is important too. Just before this call, I was talking with Larry and with Allison Turner a little bit about Airtable, which is a software that you can funnel all kinds of information into, emails, all kinds of data. We rely on it heavily here. It has really revolutionized how we interact with customers via email, and it has made us much more efficient. And so using these templates for Airtable correspondence to is really helpful to us. If you are interested in knowing more about Airtable, we can talk more about that in the question and answer period. But if you're at all interested in exploring that software, I highly recommend that you do. It's our last year would have looked really different if we hadn't been using Airtable to handle some of our external emails. Next up, we have how to guide the conversation. First, I think it's important, most of us know it's a general customer service rule, respond as promptly as you can. I think sometimes if we know that someone might be frustrated, we will dread the conversation and then we'll end up putting it off, or we'll get swamped in our many other responsibilities. And so we'll let that customer email sit a little longer than we should. And that always makes it harder, and you build it up more in your head. It's if you can take care of it promptly, that is definitely the way to go. We've also found that it is very helpful to offer to speak to the community member in person, either on the phone or face-to-face, whatever the case may be. If they're emailing something to you and they want to know more details, or they're, expressing consternation, or they just have some feedback to give to you, it is so much easier to control tone and to know how you're being interpreted if you can have those conversations in real time rather than over email. Part of what we talk about when we think about approaching all of these conversations with gratitude is that we want the customer to know that what they're concerned about, we're concerned about, and we appreciate that they are also concerned. They are, Jeff says fairly often when we have these conversations that people are caring loudly at us, and I think that is a nice way to think about it. So affirm that the thing that they're concerned about is something that you're also concerned about, and also assure them that you are you have put a lot of thought into your decisions, and even if you're not going into a lot of details about what those thoughts are, you can kind of fill them in on some of your intentions behind the decisions that you're making. So that brings us next to understanding a little bit about what these different kinds of conversations can look like. Customers wanting to know more about what you're doing. And so I'm going to turn it over to Bryce, our 57th Street manager, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the different varieties of these customer interactions.
Jenny. So yeah, there are a lot of different reasons that a customer or community member could be reaching out to you or a bookseller at your store, and understanding what it is they're offering or requesting from you is the first step to responding well. So with the principles that we outlaid at the beginning in mind, approaching conversations with gratitude, assuming the best of the customer, trying to bring those conversations back to bookselling, we've got a few kind of examples of the kinds of interactions you'll see recurring often. And the first is a customer maybe bringing you feedback on some of your procedures. Something is offered as feedback, could very often just be listened to and accepted genuinely with gratitude, knowing that the customer is bringing it to you in hope that something can be improved upon or made better from their experience. You can make note of that and in your own time decide whether there's something to learn from the feedback institutionally. The next one, so the customer might be coming to you to get help with solving a problem. This can often come across as a complaint. It might or might not be a complaint, but recognizing the fact that there's a problem that needs to be solved, gives you the opportunity to bring that conversation back to bookselling in the form of a resolution. It's important to apologize for any misunderstanding, any confusion, listen to whatever the issue is intently, making sure that the person knows that they're being heard, and then bring it back to resolving it, solving their customer service need, and making sure that they have whatever they need in order to get the book that they were looking for, or whatever it is they were looking for. Another example might be that the customer is just looking for an answer regarding a decision, the store's decision or a procedure, how you're doing something. If someone is looking for an answer as to why you've chosen to do something in a particular way, you can answer those questions directly and with clarity. We found that in answering these, there's usually nothing to gain by going too far into the details about how you arrived at that decision. It's best to avoid industry terms or overly specific data, things that might not mean anything to the customer. With Cloud getting back to the resolution of answering whatever question it is that they're asking. For all of three of these things, there are going to be instances where customers are bringing kind of more than one to you at once. Regardless, first step in answering any of these things can be to kind of assess what it is exactly that's being sought, the kinds of issues that are being brought, and what kind of response is required on your behalf. As Jenny said before, in these and with many others, look for recurring patterns, the things that it might be beneficial to establish a kind of institutional voice or response for, and know and train people to know when it is best to use those responses.
Thanks, Bryce. And then a few final things to do if you can, and understanding that we all have limited time. First of all, decide if there are people in your community whose perspective would be really valuable to you, and maybe seek it out in advance. If you know that one of your most loved customers has some questions about how many people you're allowing into the store at any given time, like talking to them about that in advance can give you some good insight into how other people might be thinking too. Don't underestimate your external advisors. Like Bryce was just saying, if you notice that some of these questions are getting asked very often, consider setting up a mechanism for people to leave feedback in an easier way. You'll still follow up on it, but allowing like maybe even anonymous suggestions and that kind of thing will be helpful to you. And it will make things easier for your customer, and will probably save you some time. Following up is that's the best part, and it's this really wonderful thing that can happen where someone who started out really upset with you becomes a lifelong friend and customer, because you've worked something through all the way to the end, and you've continued to express gratitude to them, and to assume the best of them. And so by the end of it, they will feel really heard and seen. And if they've given you advice about something and it's been useful to you, you can tell them that. And anyways, it's a really special thing that can happen sometimes, to follow up, and in doing so, like, build a relationship. And then lastly, developing a de-escalation protocol for your organization might be helpful in this too. I think a lot of these are kind of customer interactions are pretty run-of-the-mill. Even the like more difficult ones are not necessarily situations that might call for de-escalation. But knowing that you have these tools already developed and in your toolbox, and that you've shared that with the booksellers on your staff. It can give everybody a little peace of mind that if something were to turn a little bit ugly somehow, you know what you need to do to bring it back down. We've developed here at the co-op and at 57th a de-escalation protocol. I'm going to share that now. And then Elena Jones will talk a little bit about our protocol.
Hi, thank you, Jenny. As Jenny said, for the most part, I hope your interactions with customers will go so well because you've written your templates and you've run through them in your head and you've learned to kind of gather and absorb feedback. But there will likely be times, if you're, anytime you're facing the public, where things might get a little more heated. We've seen it in the store. We've heard stories about it. So we worked as a management team and called on some booksellers to help us develop this de-escalation protocol, which we're happy to share with anyone, send out as a file if you're interested. But it helps incorporate our customer service principles into these really heated moments so that you can de-escalate it and hopefully leave with everyone at a much more even keel. So the way we developed it in the last year, I think. It was a collaborative process between a few managers and a few booksellers, all of whom were really interested in solving this problem and making sure that we were able to address these issues with empathy and patience. And doing it in a collaborative way helped us to acknowledge different sensibilities and level of tolerance and ways of interpreting a situation. So it wasn't just one person saying, well, this is what it means when things get out of hand. But we were able to have a number of booksellers share their perspectives of what it means to get out of hand. I think that made the document a lot stronger. And it also allowed us to kind of remove our emotions from it. It can be such a flashpoint for emotions that if you've had a bad experience, you want to get in there and really make sure that one thing doesn't happen again by talking about it as a group, making sure everyone agrees on certain principles, that you can allow yourself to kind of not be guided only by your emotional response, or you can allow someone else to filter your emotional response and put it into a well-articulated sentence. And also in building the document, we did a good amount of research. Each person on the team did a different set of research looking for guidance. This is not something you need to come up with in isolation. You're not the only store, the only group of people who's dealing with this. So we really turned to the external world to see how other people were thinking this through. And there were plenty of sources out there that just didn't really fit for us. Talking to the wrong, kind of the wrong profession. It was a little more aimed at de-escalating things in a way that wasn't in line with the rest of our customer service principles. And then we found one organization here in Chicago called 1000 Waves, which is a self-defense training facility that they were very upfront about their philosophy, and it seemed to align with ours. So once we found that, we were able to draw from it and then further incorporate certain things we found in other documents. So it really was not assuming that one person was going to solve it for us, and also not assuming that we were the only ones facing the problem. So be open to where you're gathering the research and be comfortable with pulling a point from here and a point from there. Again, it will make you stronger to really think through what's right for your organization. And then the general principles in the document, as I said, they're just kind of extrapolated. They're magnified versions of how we would handle general customers carrying at us loudly. So when they're carrying very loudly, we always want to make sure to listen with empathy. For the most part, people just want to be heard. They want to know that we've disappointed them, or that they're having a bad day, and that someone is there listening to them. So a lot of the steps that we outline here are just about making that space where someone can talk and know that we're genuinely listening to them. Jenny has it paused here on the nonverbal de-escalation strategies. So much of it is being aware of the space. This is for if something is happening face-to-face, being aware of the space that you take up and that they take up, and making sure that you know, you have a welcoming stance. Your body language isn't kind of aggressive and like pushing them away. It might mean like standing at an angle to them rather than face to face, just to make it less of like actually two figures about to like battle. But you know, just kind of getting off to the side and showing that you're not coming at it defensively allows them hopefully to lose some of the aggression. And then you know, whether you're in a big store or small store might change how you can position yourself around other people, but trying to move a conversation to a more crowded area of the store can sometimes be helpful so that they know that you are willing to have this, or rather, you know that if anything goes wrong, you have people around you. But it also shows the other person that this is like a comfortable, that you're not trying to hide the conversation, that you're not trying to like put someone away, but that this is like an open thing to be discussed. And you can always, you know, make arrangements to move to a more private space, but having the benefit of other people around you can help ease some of that tension. So in terms of like the empathetic listening and just always being sure that the person is being heard, a lot of that is just asking questions and making sure that you understand what their concern is. So it might just be rephrasing, you know, I'm hearing that the issue is we didn't refund you on time. Is that correct? And that allows them the chance to say, yes, that is correct, or no, you're misunderstanding me. It cuts out, we run into problems when you start to make a lot of assumptions, and this cuts out that assumption. You can say, is this correct? Am I understanding you correctly? And then just keep emphasizing that you're there to help with the problem. Again, it's not a defensive thing, that you're both trying to solve something together, and that allows some of the tension to dissipate because they don't see you as an antagonist who's stopping a resolution, but hey, I'm here to help you, and you can tell me what my role is in this conversation. And then I think the last tip really is just to take your time, unless there's someone who's, you know, an immediate danger to themselves or others. You have time. It might not feel like it, but you really do have time just to say, let's take a moment and let me reflect on this. I really want to make sure I have my timeline correct, or let me make sure I understand what you're saying. And just taking that time, it can allow you to catch your breath, but it also allows them to just sit for a minute and reflect, and maybe again the tension will dissipate. And practice, like have these dialogues ready, practice them, because it's so much easier to pull them out from your brain in the time of stress than it is to feel like you're making it up as you go. And you're never going to be able to like fully replicate a really high tension situation, but the more you can run these things through your head, the more natural it becomes to say, let's take a breath. Let me address your question. And you don't have to feel like you're making it up as you go. And then that's it.
Thank you, Elena. This is our de-escalation document. We're happy to share it with anybody who's interested in having it, taking it and adopting it adapting it for your store if you like. Email us management@simcoop.com, and we're happy to share. Yeah, so that is the end of our presentation bit. We're happy to hear questions, or if anybody has any ideas of anything that they'd like to work through together here, then that would be fun. We could do that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, everybody, please feel free at this point. You can use the chat if you'd like. Also, you are welcome to unmute yourself and just ask the questions. I'll give a pause for a second for anybody that wants to jump in. I do have a question for you, and thank you. That was great. So over the past year, have you found, is there a most common situation that you've been dealing with frequently with how great a transitional year this past year has been that you had to deal with customers? Is there a pretty consistent scenario that you have to work out amongst the stores?
Definitely. I mean, there've been a few different seasons in the last year, but it is, I mean, we are aware that we're one of the last to remain closed, and that has come up pretty often for a while now. We are clear in all of our communications about our thinking behind that, and how much of that is a financial reality as opposed to the public health concern, which is also still a big concern. And so adapting like getting to our best language about that, answering that question has taken the most practice and has been something that we've done the most, I think. I can also imagine that when a store does reopen, there are so many things that look different in the store that people might have questions about. I think a lot of stores are dealing with smaller inventories right now. You may have had to remove fixtures from your store to make more space. Certainly like PPE and limiting the number of people in your stores, all of those requirements, I feel like could be very tricky to talk to people about, especially in places where there's a lot of different perspectives on how we should all be behaving right now.
Yep. So yeah, like we said, please feel free to jump in if you have any questions or want to talk out a scenario. I'm gonna keep asking my questions if that's okay until we get some other participants in here. But so you were closed through the November and the political season last year. Would there have been any specific preparation you would have gone into for that, specifically having those difficult kinds of conversations? Or is that not a conversation? I guess I'm speaking from my personal bookselling background. That is a conversation I would have expected in the store I was in. Is that something that you would have expected to have? It felt a lot like customers just wanting to be heard, not necessarily wanting a resolution, if that makes sense. But would there have been any kind of in-person preparation you would have gone into had you been open for the political season?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's kind of hard to imagine what all we would have done going into that, but I do know that we would have spent a lot of time with booksellers talking about how those conversations might go. And so like you're saying, a lot of it is just listening, and that is a good part of our jobs as booksellers, is to listen to people. But then knowing exactly what the balance is of like how long you've been listening, and if it's time to do other things too. And so really reminding people to bring it back to bookselling, listening to someone work through whatever they're dealing with around the election, but then saying, after you've had that conversation for a moment, this is a book that I have found really helpful to me during this time. Can I show that to you? Or asking them if there's, some particular interest that they want to explore more, and then walking them over to a section that discusses that interest. I mean, we would have refreshed on de-escalation training too, just in case anything got touchy, but I think our best efforts would have been put towards how to have those conversations in a community space in a way that is like that you're keeping the chance of escalation as small as possible.
Great. Suzanne from MaxBacks in the chat asked for more details about Airtable.
Elena and Bryce, I will happily hear from you on this too. So we have been using Airtable for years. We used it in our events department robustly before the pandemic, and then we have adapted it, and it is all of our customer correspondence points to Airtable, as well as all of our correspondence with publishers, like our PO follow-up and that kind of thing. And it feeds into it magically. I don't understand that part, but it works. And then we're able to sort it and tag it and like get it into batches so that we can have booksellers address those batches. As it makes it go faster if you're answering the same question over and over again instead of having to switch tracks. That is a very non-technical view of it. Elena and Bryce, do you have anything else to add to it? And Larry, you use it too. You can,
Yeah, I'll jump in for sure.
Jenny gave a great description of it. So every email comes in. Oh, my internet connection's unstable. Every email comes in as a different line on Airtable. So that's when you can start to organize it based on, oh, this is an apology, or this is an update about our opening policy, and you can, systematize it, as Jenny said. We also use it in our course books department. So we solicit adoptions from the faculty here at the University of Chicago. And in a regular non-pandemic quarter, we might have 1,000 books that are requested for a class. So each line comes in as a separate bit of information, and it allows us, instead of having to scan a bunch of emails for the information, allows it to kind of like already have it organized by department. The ISBNs are in the same place as the book titles, which is it's a lot cleaner than email, and it helps us systematize and do things at a much larger scale, much more efficiently than we've would have been able to do without it. And I'll just say that there's no end. I'm not being paid by Airtable, but there's no end of number of things you could use it for. Like really, we've been really creative, thanks to booksellers throwing out ideas and stuff. We've been creative about how we can use it, what it can help organize. It's not only an email tool, but it can help us schedule and set up a development plan for various projects and stuff.
Yeah, and I'll jump in really quickly there. I use it. I've been converting most of GLIBA's operations to use Airtable or function through Airtable. So we're kind of phasing out Google Forms and things like that, where you would need to like create a Google form, and then you would then export that data into another application where you could parse it and segment it as you needed. Airtable is great because you can set up a survey, have it directly flow into a form, and then do whatever you want with that data. You can create charts, you can create surveys, you can all sorts of things. I'm going to throw a couple links into the chat for some pages that are live on the GLIBA website that you can see where I've used Airtable. Another really great feature is you can create event calendars, like completely customizable and functional event calendars. We're using it for the bookstore survey, the group bookstore event program. So publishers will submit a proposal. It will feed directly live into the website, where booksellers will then see that that offering from the publisher, and then booksellers can opt into that event live. So it's been great as far as alleviating some of the work on my end to sort through data as it comes in and then create these new things. So you can, automation for me, I think has been one of the best parts of it. Automation, and I also use it for our bestsellers. So I record our weekly bestsellers, and so I have an ongoing, so I can see which publishers are best, has had the most bestsellers. I can create graphs and charts and different things, so I can see our year at a glance what publishers have been consistently, hitting our bestsellers list, which is cool. And being a very visual person, that's really more helpful to me than just staring at a spreadsheet. So that's kind of what I'm using it for.
I'll jump in real quickly just to say that in addition to everything that else has been said thus far, it's one of those tools that the more you use it, the stronger it gets, because of the intense like sortability and customizability of what it offers. The more you put into it, the more you can use it as a way of seeing everything from sales to correspondence. To the more you use it, the more it gives you. So it's worth the investment of time.
Let's see, what time are we at? Any questions?
Jenny, can I ask you a question?
Oh, maybe.
So in the past year, we've had a lot of people come to us angry about something. I guess this is a two-pronged question. How do you deal with just like general angst in the air when it's not, you can't apologize for something that you did wrong because you didn't do anything wrong? How do you feel those types of complaints? And then related to that, what about complaints about something that it's external but related? So the post office, where we really have no customer doesn't have their book at the end of the day.
Right. They're great questions. The first one is, I think the first one's really hard. I think all of us probably, we're in this industry because we are really passionate about what we're doing, and we're all, I would imagine, very devoted to our stores and to the communities that we're serving. And so when somebody feels like you haven't done right by them, it's a rotten feeling. I mean, it really is. But I do think that those three principles that we talked about at the beginning are the way to think about it. Knowing that even if they're coming off in a rough way, that they're bringing the concern to you because they expect good things from you, and they want your store to do well, and we should feel grateful for that. And then, bringing things back to your store's mission and what you're doing, and ours is book selling, and anything we can do to make that service as satisfying for people as we can, we want to do. I do think it is, I have watched it happen many times over the years, that those conversations can really shift and become something really good. And there's just practice and kindness and patience along the way. And if you still have hard feelings at the end of that and you need to take a walk, then that's fine too. And then the second one, yeah, it has been a remarkable year for other problems happening that you can't control. I think our approach, and I think what the right thing is taking some responsibility for those problems, even if it's really not your responsibility, and just offering an apology. If you can't, if something has gotten lost in the mail and you're in a position to be able to replace it, that expense will be, I would imagine, will be made up to you by having gained a customer who feels like you have really taken care of them in a difficult time, as you're able to do that. I think if there is any possibility that you could apologize for something, usually I think that that's the right thing to do, even if you're apologizing for the post office, which is clearly not your your responsibility. Those are first thoughts about it. Those are great questions. Thank you, Elena.
All right, I'll throw this question out there. Does anybody have a specific customer interaction that they'd like to discuss, whether it ended well or poorly, and how you went about that? Anybody want to get into specifics? If not, that's okay too. Everybody's so polite today. No, if not, that's fine. If we're starting to wind down, that's fine too. I do want to mention that this session, along with today's earlier session about free digital marketing resources, have been recorded. They'll be available on the GLIBA.org website this Friday. You'll also be receiving an email from me that will contain those videos, links to the text chat file that will also be saved, and a survey for the to please fill out based on the sessions that you attended. So please look out for that this Friday. That being said, I think we can close this out. Right. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Bryce. That was fantastic. Yeah, I think the email was put into the chat, if not mistaken, for any bookstore. Yep, there it is. management@simcoop.com. For any bookstores that would like a copy of the de-escalation document that you had, that is in there. And great. Thank you all. Oh, very quickly, tomorrow, Rep Picks, 11 a.m. and 12:30 Central. And then on Thursday, we have a Meet the Authors event. And then Jonathan Franzen in conversation with Javier Ramirez of Exile and Bookfill at 12:30 Central Time. So please join us for that. Links to all those events are on the gliba.org website. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.